The AU Youth Envoy Cleopatra Mpemba has been visiting a number of SADC countries, including South Africa. Her visit comes at the time of many challenges for young people, including poverty and unemployment. African Union Youth Envoy Cleopatra Mpemba joins us now to look at her role during these difficult times. Cleopatra, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Welcome to South Africa. Can you briefly tell us the purpose of your visit?
Thank you very much. It's such an honor to be here. Well, the purpose of my visit is to speak with regards to the issues that young people are faced with, and this is with regards to potential collaborations with our AU agencies, especially NEPID and APRM, specifically because NEPID, which is part of the African Union Commission, was given the mandate to look and review at our 10-year implementation plan in terms of Agenda 2063. And part of my role as African Union Chairperson's Youth Envoy is to ensure that young people's voices are also included and they become part of this process to review where we are in terms of that 10-year implementation plan, as well as its successor towards the next 10 years and how we're going to implement Agenda 2063. When we look at Agenda 2063, especially Aspiration 6, it talks about in Africa, whose development shall rely on the potential of its people, especially its youth and the women. So therefore, it's very important that, when we are in these discussions and we're coming up with these processes as well as making decisions to us to follow, the young people are fully represented and they become part of this process too.
And talking about, young people become part of this process and the agenda that you have in front of you before the successor comes on, look back now for us and tell us what you've been able to achieve of those goals that you've set out for yourselves and those that you need to, get to as part of your role. How much have you been able to get done so far?
Okay, so maybe I'll start off just briefly to talk about my role being the African Union Chairperson's Youth Envoy. I'm the second Youth Envoy, and this role is just 3 years in, which was a decision that came from all the member states to say that we need to include young people within the leadership structures of the African Union. It's a rotational role, and my predecessor was from North Africa, and I'm currently holding this role from SADC. It will not come back to SADC in 8 years' time. And in as much as I'm representing the continent, I'm very grateful as well to have the support with regards to SADC. So having gotten into this role, I moved to the African Union headquarters in the chairperson's office in April this year. And part of the initiatives we've been involved in, I think I'll start off with our humanitarian summit. So we had an AU Head of State's humanitarian summit that happened in Equatorial Guinea, Malawi in May. And prior to that, I hosted a youth forum, specifically with member states that are represented from across the continent. And we held this in Kenya. And to ensure that young people got onto the table and speak about the issues that we are being faced with when it comes to humanitarian issues, including issues to do with climate change, public health issues, as well as refugees and access that they have to education. So we came up with a vision of our own within this report, which we call the Humanitarian Declaration Report for Young People. And I had the opportunity to present this report in our AU Head of States meeting to our policymakers and leaders to say that when they get together, specifically with this event, the Humanitarian Summit, where there were pledges towards how we're going to look and mitigate the issues we're faced with when it comes to the humanitarian crisis on the continent. But to ensure that young people's voices are also incorporated in that decision making, and to ensure that they also form part of, when it comes to the pledging and the support that's coming from various governments and funding that is coming in terms of, them having access to it too. In addition to this,
Pardon me for coming in there. Pardon me. I just couldn't help but really follow up, as you're talking about issues around access to funding. Unemployment is a huge issue in Africa for young people right now, Cleopatra. How then are you, working towards ensuring that you are assisting young people in this particular regard, especially this issue of unemployment?
Okay, I do agree that unemployment is a crisis that we have on the continent. And this will require the public sector as well as the private sector coming together in terms of how we can bridge that gap. Not only that, but also looking at our education system. So, for example, right now we're going towards our STC, which is a special technical committee of all the ministers of education in Africa. And specifically in this regard, where I'm getting ready to present the voices of young people too, we're talking about how we can ensure that we can bridge the gap when it comes to skills that are relevant to the current market we have, and to ensure that young people are ready for the market in terms of where we're going, as well as for IR and the modern society pretty much. So I think this would take a holistic view, and with regards to my role, it's really getting into, ensuring that, we have collaboration when it comes to all sectors, the public sector, the private sector, as well as negotiating for more funding that should come in for young people. The African Development Bank, for example, next month will have their evaluation week where they're looking at their strategy at the moment. And I'll have the privilege of also attending this meeting, but specifically to just see how best we can ensure that with regards to this strategy, we have more young people that are represented, as well as ensuring that even when it comes to funding, it can become accessible to governments, but specifically to go towards young people, youth-led enterprises, and also ensure that we have friendly when it comes to the requirements, when it comes to funding for young people and the access to credit too. So there's a lot really that has to be done. I do admit that, but I think it would take the approach to ensure that we have the policy on the table. The private sector is playing a part. Our education system to ensure that we have the relevant skills, to ensure that our young people are ready for the market too.
And very briefly then, as we wrap up our conversation, how worried are you about what we are seeing happening in the Mediterranean Sea, for example, where we're seeing quite a number of people dying there, and a lot of them are young people. They are trying to get to Europe to seek a better life. How worried are you about this situation?
Honestly, it's very heartbreaking. It's really, really heartbreaking. And it's something really that we need a solution. And we need to ensure that our leaders and our governments have a solution towards this for young people. It's so heartbreaking. As a young person myself, it's something that, anyone could be in that position. I myself could be in that position too. And we really need to do more for young people, which is also part of the reason I've been on a 60 youth engagement tour. And part of this listening tour was taking a three-way model, really, in terms of, a youth town hall to really sit down with young people after we rolled out our AU Youth survey, and looking at the thematic areas and the various challenges young people are faced with, as well as what they can recommend in terms of policy and what I can present in terms of to our government leaders. In addition to this, to ensure that we do not forget the marginalized community, part of the 60 days tour also involved visiting communities and ensuring that the marginalized communities and their voices are also included. Youth with disabilities to be included, as well as youth who do not even have access to information and technology, to be able to be aware in terms of what's going on and the opportunities that are present as well within the African Union. And finally, on political commitments. So, in terms of the visits that I've been involved in with various countries with the 60 days tour, this ends with political commitments as a way of policy engagement, where we go to the leaders and, we speak about what's happening on the ground. And this is grounded on what young people are telling me themselves, as well as, recommend various policy interventions in this regard.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, Cleopatra. Do appreciate it. That is Cleopatra Mpemba, an African Union Youth Envoy, talking to us about, the issues that we're seeing affecting young people around the continent and the importance of ensuring that solutions are found as speedily as possible.